All right, friends, there's nothing standing in our way, and if there were, we'd knock it over because the hot heat is coming, and so are we. Here we are with two games that you won't be able to believe that one of them's going to get knocked out. We've got Twilight Imperium IV up against Puerto Rico. I'm Rob, here today with
Brendan,
and we're joined once again with a special guest commentator in the person of none other than
Nick Mariner.
Nick Mariner. We are here today to talk about two games that have been on the field before and that have earned their position and held on, fought tooth and claw to stay on the bracket. Here they are. Only one of them is going to make it past tomorrow. We have Twilight Imperium IV versus Puerto Rico.
Rob, this is incredible. We have Space Lions versus Traders of Spices in the Caribbean.
And there's no way to know which way it will indigo.
How can you possibly tell? This is incredible. I mean, Twilight, it almost doesn't get more diverse than this in terms of two completely different games. Twilight Imperium 4 might be when people talk to Plato and they say, where is the platonic ideal of the Ameritrash game? He's gonna crawl out of the coffin box from TI4 and say, it's in here!
And it's big enough for him to do so.
That's right. And then on the other hand, you got Puerto Rico, which is the epitome of this sort of moving cubes around, so much so that most people playing it don't really think about what it means to be playing a game about being a colonist in the Caribbean.
It is challenging.
So it's a rough matchup. Nick, what do you think about these two? Where do you come down on this matchup?
Two amazing games, absolutely. I will say I've only actually played TI4 once, but it also for me is I commonly regard as one of the best gameplay experiences I've ever had at a table. It was, about 8 hours at a con with some friends. Even though it was an 8 hour plus game, it came down to the last turn that three people had their winning move ready to go, and the guy who got to it first won, and everybody just lost it. And I was so blown away. And then Puerto Rico is a standby for me online, on the table. It's one of my favorite games of all time. And so trying to weigh which of those, the tremendous, unbelievable shout and holler and flip the table moment versus the more cerebral, reliable Euro. That was what I was trying to think about as I was coming down on these two games.
It's an interesting case where we're running into what we call here on Game Fight Show the Netrunner paradox. When you're trying to decide how to consider a game for winning or losing, are we talking about all of the 23-year history that is Twilight Imperium? Or are we specifically talking about Twilight Imperium 4 when we're looking at this bout? Because if you look at it, Puerto Rico is maybe the oldest game in the bracket. It's from 2002, tried and true, well-known game. Whereas Twilight Imperium 4 is from 2017. It's one of the new kids on the block here. But it's also from 1997. So I just can't tell people. Luckily, it's not my job to tell people how to vote. But if it were, I'd be doing poorly.
I think TI4 also, it's important to know that one of TI4, when Christian Peterson's been interviewed about this, as he talks about the way that it works, I'm pretty sure Puerto Rico is one of those games that he talks about influencing the design, at least the later design, because it's got that you pick the card and then everybody else does the minor version of the action thing. So it's interesting to think about TI4 in some ways reflects a little bit of the design of Puerto Rico.
And that's something that you have to really give the team that makes TI4. You got to give them a little bit of credit here. When they steal, they're on it. They say, we loved this so much, we took it.
So I'll confess, Puerto Rico is not a game I've played very much, in part because of the theme. I do find, I don't know why, like a space battle between fantasy races trying to destroy planets and stuff, I'm fine with that. But something more grounded in real history gets a little too close to home, and I find myself having trouble divorcing my ideas, even though it is kind of a dry, dusty Euro. It doesn't really need to be about what the game says on the box.
Right, and then Puerto Rico has that challenge of everything that comes to the island is a colonist. But I know that the colonist I put in the warehouse is not the same colonist I'm putting in the sugar field. Like I know what I'm doing, I know what this economically was in the 17th century, especially as a history teacher. It's hard to forget that's part of what's right underneath the surface of all this.
Well, I don't want to get too heavy here, but unfortunately, larger powers mistreating the people of Puerto Rico is not something that has been left in the setting of this. It's something that currently exists, whereas I have never been subjugated by a space lizard.
Right.
The space lizards, however, you just don't realize.
Yeah. Right.
I've got some websites to show you, Rob.
So did you?
Ooh, don't open Brendan's links.
If I have to come down on one, and you're correct, that the thing that both of these games has for me is my absolute favorite game mechanism that exists in the entire world, and that is the action follow mechanic. I pick a thing, and then knowing everyone else at the table gets to do a smaller version of that thing. Both of these have it. It's why I love both of them. It's why I love a game like Race for the Galaxy. I love games that do that. I'll go ahead and start and take my pick, and it's going to be because I want to stay consistent with my previous performance on this show when faced with high convoluted fantasy versus dry crusty Euro. I'm going to go with Puerto Rico on this. For essentially the same justification that TI4 it's an event game. It's one that you don't play very often because it takes the entire day to play, and it's an event when you do it, and it's always awesome when you do it. But Puerto Rico is just such a great standby for me. I play it on Board Game Arena all the time. I play it on the app all the time. I get it into to table with friends when I can, and it is a game that I see more often, and it does everything. I think, potentially complicated theme aside, from a design aspect, I find it to be as close to flawless of a game as I think I've ever played. And so I adore Puerto Rico. Its ability to get to the table more often, despite the fact that it is just plain compared to high science fiction. That's my vote if I had to pick one out of these two.
It's hard to leave the length and difficulty of a game out of your calculation in this. It would be irresponsible to do so. I don't advocate that. Please don't say that I ever did.
Rob's advocating leaving the length of the game out.
That's all I heard. Your mic cut out, so all I heard was
fake news. But, Twilight Imperium, it does have another side. Brendan, tell me about your last play of Twilight Imperium.
Well, we played at the optimal player count of 3, which is, generally when people want to set up an event game, they try to only get 3 people to come. And 2 of us had not played before, and so in playing it, we were experimenting around a little bit, and admittedly, I'm maybe a little hesitant with our military. And right before the first battle, somebody won the game. It took like 2.5 or 3 hours. It was so un Twilight Imperium from everything I've read and heard about how the game should go. But I mean, for me, that's one of those games where when you read the rules, if you read a lot of rule books like I do, that's about half the time I'm reading a novel before I go to bed. The other half the time it's a rule book from a game. There's some games where you're reading the rule book and you just like, oh yeah, I want to try that mechanism. And other games where the pleasure of the game emerges through the gameplay. And I think TI4 is one of those games that lives in your mind space as much as on the table. And then when you go play it, you get to enact all these different things, the wealth of choices that it has for you, versus often I think the best Euros have a really tight set of things that they do, and the gameplay is emergent, right? So Sagrada is a game I've played countless times, and part of what I like about that one is the many choices that come out of the narrow windows. Or Nick, last time you were on, we were talking about Castles of Burgundy has that same thing. And I think Puerto Rico, that's why it has the staying power that it does, is it not only it's the shorter game that you mentioned, it's more playable on the table, but it's got this wealth of opportunity when you play it.
But
permutation.
TI4 has just that massive variability that you could explore that game so many times before you get the same race even. Whereas Puerto Rico is really more about that. Find a couple of dominant strategies and see how good you can get. And I am historically and well documented to be absolutely terrible at Puerto Rico.
But it really says something that you're willing to come back again and again.
I just, I'm Charlie Brown. The football's there. I'm going to get it this time. I just know it.
That's right.
I just want to say that Beltrami, Konecka, and Peterson shouldn't rest too well because Puerto Rico, last round, I don't know if you remember, their bout was against none other than Scythe. And they took them out.
Sometimes when people look at TI4, what they see is that giant bag of spaceships that you get with it. And what I got to think about is when people look at Scythe on the table, they're like, "Ooh, look at those minis! I can't wait to stomp around with those minis." And Puerto Rico's got the little cubes, and the cubes won. So TI4, watch your back, buddy.
It's a giant killer.
Yep, no question. The only way we'll find out who's going to slay this giant is if you go to Twitter at GameFightShow.
At GameFightShow.
And make your voice be heard.
Vote now.
Oh, there's the gong that tells us it's time to throw to Eleanor with the results from yesterday's big bout.
All right, it's Eleanor with your results. Blood Rage was quenched in a fleu de vin by Viticulture, who is toasting Bacchus for having secured its position in the third round. All right, back to you guys.
Oh! Ooh, did you see that one coming?
It was a surprise to me, Rob.
Oh, I could not have told you that was going to shake out the way that it did. Oh, tears will fall. Well, I want to thank Eleanor, and let's also all thank Nick for helping out today with his insightful commentary.
Happy to be back!
Thanks, Nick.
All right, that's it for today. We'll see you tomorrow with the results from today's bout and another hot pair of games coming at ya here on Game Fight Show.
Game Fight Show.
Brought to you by Rattlebox Games.